Tolerances: cancel melee attack, cancel ailments, cancel spiritual attack, cancel natural elements, resist chaos attack. Come on, was my first thought. The fact his EP was all the same number was a dead giveaway that he was gaming the system. I didn't say anything, though, since Seal didn't. In the end, I didn't think there was much doubt that Diablo was the most powerful person in my entire hierarchy, between that EP, fake or not, and his resistances. His Azazel skill contained Hasten Thought, Lord's Ambition, Control Dimensions, Multidimensional Barrier, All of Creation, Dominate Punishment, Dominate Charm, and World of Temptation, mostly the same abilities I had. He carefully went over these with me, clearly looking for someone to brag about them with, and Dr. Seal gave him high marks for his understanding of them. Though, really, Diablo was stronger than me, wasn't he? Given how I couldn't really use my skills without Seal's help. His magicule count was immense, his level high, and the quality of his skills beyond question. He was an exceptionally omnipotent demon in every way, and why he decided to serve under me was a total mystery. He had an unquenchable thirst for battle, not to mention a fixation with me that bordered on problematic, but I enjoyed being able to count on his seemingly infinite stores of strength. With this evolution, I now wondered how he'd do in a practice battle against Zijin. I was sure it'd turn into a great fight. He and Benimaru, too. I felt like Benimaru was always going easy on anyone he fought in training, in part because if he got real serious, it'd raise acres and acres of land and kill off thousands. But that was no issue in the labyrinth. I suppose Benimaru didn't enjoy revealing his skills much, either, but still. Water would win over fire element-wise, so I'd think Zijin would have an edge over Benimaru, but there was no telling unless they actually duked it out. Then again, there was no need to rank my troops like this. I could just call Benimaru, Diablo, and Zijin my top 3, and that should keep any strife to a minimum. That was all I needed from Diablo. As for his servants, he told me that Ghidorah had joined Venom as his apprentice. Apprentice? Yes. Adding him to my team eliminates any worry that he'd betray us, you see. I thought we were safe from that by now, probably, but still, it was a relief to hear. Ghidorah was already kept in place by his role as Labyrinth Guardian, so Diablo wasn't free to make him his 24-hour gopher, but he didn't mind that. If he named Ghidorah an apprentice, I guess that meant he saw him as different from a run-of-the-mill lackey. That's good and all, but why did you sign him on? Well, he may lack suitable piety for you, Sir Rimuru, but his curiosity for magic is the real thing. He has potential by human standards, so I thought I would initiate him by interacting with his mysterious art of reincarnation. And then? Pathetically enough, he nearly died in our previous battle. That would go against your orders, Sir Rimuru, so I reincarnated him as a demon to prevent that, but oddly enough, he became a metal demon, a species I am unfamiliar with. Diablo stopped speaking for a moment. He turned toward me. I hadn't heard of that term, either. Did I do something or what? Oh, that was me. What do you mean, oh? This was exactly why I wanted to hold these one-on-one discussions. Seal had been really busy, it sounded like. I really wished it'd think these things over more. If he was a metal demon, that sounded close to Beretta, too. No need to worry about that. The concept is completely different. Good. Whatever. I wasn't going to get worked up over it. Not that I needed to, but either way, I was getting sick of all this. Maybe it's thanks to the little push I gave him. I had to be honest. There was no other option. This elated Diablo, as I expected, so we wound up talking about it for a while. Summing up, Diablo had taken a liking to Ghidorah as well. They had an ongoing promise that should something happen, the demon would have him join his family. Ghidorah was famously obsessed with magic, being the teacher of that magic-born Rosin and all, and I was sure he wouldn't hesitate to become a demon to satisfy his intellectual curiosity. That's the kind of guy he was, and as long as he didn't bother me, it was best to let him have his way. Besides, I didn't mind having that old man nearby, either, so it was all good to me. It'd be gross if he started going around looking like a Dalman, though, so I made sure to officially forbid any Rimuru worship on his part. No way was I gonna allow another wacky cult member in my midst, apprentice of Diablo or not. All right. Well, he's your responsibility now, so take good care of him. Old man Ghidorah looked pretty aged to me, honestly. It felt kind of weird phrasing it that way, but then again, Diablo was even older, old enough that concepts like golden years were thrown right out the window. So maybe all of this was fine. Regardless, Diablo now had 2 personal assistants to watch over. With a bow, he left the room, Testarossa quickly taking his place. She was as elegant as ever as she sat down in front of me. I had no intention of following through on it, but part of me wondered if I really could name her my secretary. Actually, no. I'd need to name Diablo my chief diplomat then, and I was sure he'd go berserk in that role. I got enough problems already. Let's stick to this. Besides, I had other business with Testarossa. I wasn't sure how to bring it up yet, but before I could, she presented me with a sheet of paper. It contained statistics on the demons in her family. Name, Moss, EP, 1,079,397. Race, Demon Peer, Archduke. Protection, Blanc Clan. Title, Empress's Aid. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Unique Skill Gatherer. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Name, Cian, EP, 286,596. Race, Demon Peer, Viscount. Protection, Blanc Clan. Title, Empress's Secretary. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Unique Skill Recorder. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements. That was the long and short of it, including some information that only I could read off them. Moss and Cian had seen no direct action in our recent war. They weren't exposed to any danger, and thus they were saved from the ever-curious hands of Seal. As for Testarossa herself. Name, Testarossa, EP, 3,333,124. Race, Demon God, Primal Demon, Devil Lord. Protection, Rimuru's Protection. Title, Killer Lord. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Ultimate Skill Belial, Lord of the Underworld. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Compared to before the fighting, her existence points had ballooned beyond comparison. It was a good 3 times the figure from back when she fought Veilgrind on that airship. Looks like your magicule count grew a bunch, huh? It did. If it had done so in time for my climactic battle with Veilgrind, I'm sure it would have been a more interesting performance. It's a pity. I'd hesitate on calling war a performance, all right. Not that she'd listen to me if I told her. My experiences here have really convinced me that in battle, quality matters much more than quantity. In this war, too, battle experience sealed a lot more people's fates than magicule counts. Testarossa had put up a decent fight against Veilgrind because they were both almost equal in experience level. She stood no chance in an extended fight, but she could drag it on and stall for time well enough, at least. If Testarossa's magicule stores were larger, that meant she was much more capable in battle now. That was tremendously reassuring, but it also placed even more responsibility on me to watch over her and ensure she didn't go out of control. I was leaving all that to Diablo at the moment, but now I thought I should pay a bit more attention to her. Belial, though. It just oozed a sense of danger, much like Testarossa herself. It had a pretty handy slate of abilities: Hasten Thought, Universal Detect, Lord's Ambition, Control Dimensions, Multidimensional Barrier, All of Creation, Dominate Life, and World of the Dead. Yep, another world-type ability, and judging by the name World of the Dead, I wouldn't subject myself to it for $1 billion. I'd let Seal maintain that one for me, I think. Scary. So if you wanted to talk alone with me, is this about something that can't be stated in public? What would that be exactly? Testarossa, after handing me the stats on Moss and Cian, got right down to business. I was glad she was so quick on the uptake. Mentally flipping the page, I brought up an issue of mine, the meeting we'd have with Masayuki tomorrow morning. I'd like to think I'm reading too much into it, but I wanted to bring something up with you. I'm actually going to be meeting with Masayuki and his people, but I'm not sure how to approach it. I see. Is this about how we'll deal with the Empire? Again, so quick on the uptake. It was surprising. Yes, exactly. I guess he's pretty troubled about it, and if they're asking me for solutions, I don't really know what to give them, sort of. I doubted Shion had thought even that far, but assuming Masayuki was the reborn Emperor Ludora, that still didn't mean they just let him take the throne. We still didn't know where the current Emperor Ludora, or the now transformed Michael, had run off to. If Masayuki was to name himself the leader. But then again, I was sure he'd do anything to get out of that obligation, and it'd be weird for my nation to push him in that direction. Besides, there was no breaking Michael's castle guard ability as long as people put their faith in Ludora, so we'd also need to consider how we'd handle the Empire's citizens. Worst of all, I was given, zero time for this. Trying to smooth things over with King Garzel would be hard enough, but this was even worse. Like I kept on saying, I didn't want to get too involved in any of it, but I doubted I'd be afforded the luxury. In that case, allow me to join the talks. The eastern lands the Empire calls home used to be my domain. As your diplomatic attaché, I wouldn't hesitate to help with this, sweet. How reliable she was turning out to be. I couldn't leave something like this to Seal alone. I could relay whatever solution it came up with, but I'd still need people on the ground to execute it. And even if Seal was absolutely correct, if the Empire refused to accept it, we'd have to go for something else. Unless we were gonna make the Empire a vassal state of Tempest, I didn't think we had the right to meddle in the administrations of other countries. Along those lines, I was sure Testarossa had the mental powers to deal with whatever came up. She did well with the Western nations, and once we came up with our direction, I'd feel safe leaving the rest to her. Okay, see you tomorrow morning, then. Very well. I am on the job. Testarossa's smile reassured me once again. I was feeling a tad better. That was all I had for her, so I stood up to see her out the door when. Sir Rimuru, there was one more thing I wanted to report. Oh? As I think you recall, the former Imperial General Caligulio has filed a request for clemency. That jogged my memory. It was another theory issue, but I didn't see anything impossible with his request. All right. Why don't we deal with that right now? Good thing Testarossa had remembered for me. Her attention to detail was another reason I felt so secure with her. So, hoping to finish up that job before dinner, I joined her on the way to our research lab. There were 2 people to go. After a quick meal, I called in Ultima. I was about to die waiting for you, she said, all cutesy as she plopped onto the sofa. It made me smile a bit. I'm sure she'd make a darling little sister for someone. It made me want to break out some tea, along with a few of my favorite cookies. Ooh. Oh. You do that for me, Sir Rimuru? He. Hey, I can make tea, too, you know. Not very good tea, but still. Hell, I could even make some coffee. Or, really, I could turn on a coffee maker. When it came to fancier approaches, even Shion could do a better job. It's sad, but that's the truth. Shion was actually pretty decent at making both tea and coffee these days. I tried myself, since it wasn't nice to constantly complain about other people's cooking, but it's harder than it looks. I'd gotten takeout pretty much all the time in my previous life. Cooking a meal from scratch was something I had zero experience with. Work kept me too busy for it, and considering all the dishes and cleaning up, it just wasn't worth it efficiency-wise. So the kitchen in my apartment was just as spotless as when I'd first moved in. I'd buy a cookbook occasionally, figuring I'd give something a whirl when I was free, but of course I never did. That memory was serving me well now, at least, so I guess it wasn't a total waste of money. Regardless, if all it involved was grinding some beans and adding hot water, even I could whip up some coffee. Oh, not at all. I'm more than satisfied just with this tea. If she was that happy about it, then so was I. Well, no need to say no to coffee, though. It'll take some time, but we can talk in the meantime. I wanted some as well, so I put a filter in the maker and added hot water. This whole coffee maker setup was the work of Kaizen, and mass-produced versions were now on the market, so the cafes were doing pretty decent business, too. The fragrant aroma of coffee beans filled the air as I presented as suave and sophisticated an air as I could to Testarossa. I was sure this would do wonders for my rep. Making good impressions about things like this was so important. I personally find it petty. And I personally don't give a crap. This was a broad, advanced strategy, nothing petty about it. Besides, there was no point acting all strong around a bunch of battle-addicted primals who lived for war every waking moment. Better to compete with them in a different genre entirely. You have already showed your dignity to them well enough, so I feel you do not need to worry. It's fine, all right? I didn't mean to look dignified in their minds in the first place. But it didn't matter. Let's get back on topic. So can I hear your report, then? Certainly. First, let me give you this. I was given a written outline of her clan's stats. Name, Veyron, EP, 882,869. Race, Demon Peer, Duke. Protection, Violet Clan. Title, Poison Princess's Butler. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Ultimate Gift Artist. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Name, Zonda, EP, 301,316. Race, Demon Peer, Viscount. Protection, Violet Clan. Title, Poison Princess's Chef. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Unique Skill Fusionist. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Veyron's strength grabbed my attention first, but what really threw me was Zonda's Unique Skill Fusionist. This wasn't in the same family as Xion's wacky Master Chef skill, instead, it was designed for situational awareness and supporting allies. Via its fusing process, it could heal any sort of wound on anyone. It didn't meddle with the laws of cause and effect the way Xion's skill did, so that was a relief. Next up, Ultima herself. Name, Ultima, EP, 2,668,816. Race, Demon God, Primal Demon, Devil Lord. Protection, Raimuru's Protection. Title, Pain Lord. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Ultimate Skill Samael, Lord of Deathly Poison. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Ultima, much like Testarossa, had grown a lot, and her magicule count had been constantly rising since her evolution completed. She was well into million-class territory, but how much stronger would she get? I was glad to have her on my team, but too much would be a threat. And we can't forget about Ultima's abilities, either. The ultimate skill Samael gave her Hasten Thought, Universal Detect, Lord's Ambition, Control Dimensions, Multidimensional Barrier, Detect Weakness, Craft Poison, World of Destruction. All geared for killing, huh? Craft Poison was the nastiest of them. Combine it with Detect Weakness, and she could instantly create just the right poison to kill her opponent. But I was even more curious about World of Destruction. It was a vicious world-level ability, one that could unconditionally kill anyone and anything except for spiritual life forms. Kind of a supercharged version of my own merciless skill, I think. It wouldn't work against the truly powerful, so maybe it was best to have that one sealed away. Ultima, my apologies, I began, pouring coffee into a cup to calm myself down. What about? So, about your world of destruction ability. Yes? She gladly accepted the cup I handed to her. I had to come out with it now or I never would. You're banned from using it. All right. I was just thinking that I didn't need it anyway. I guess you really can read my mind, so Rimuru. Huh? Oh. Yeah. Of course, right? Ha ha ha. I laughed it off as I internally thanked my lucky stars. I'm not sure why, but I guess Ultima wanted to stay hands-off with World of Destruction. But maybe it should have been obvious. She was such a battle-obsessed girl that winning every single battle by default probably didn't excite her. If she was willing to accept that, then wonderful. Relieved, I sat down and enjoyed some conversation for a while. My final interviewee was Carrera. Let me tell you, my lord, if you didn't step in to help me, I'm not sure I could have ever beaten Kondo. That man was real strong. I can hardly believe he was human. She ended her report with a light laugh. Seal had told me this much, but hearing it from Carrera's own mouth made it even more vivid. She had won that battle by the tiniest of margins, and her praise for him was the unvarnished truth. And she was right, Kondo was something else. Benimaru had taken out Granite, number 3 in the Empire's internal list, but even he was pretty wary of Kondo. In fact, he was confident he could have beaten anyone in the Empire except for that guy. Taking out a menace like that would have been a feather in anyone's cap, really. But Carrera said it was all thanks to the power she was granted. Receiving my body, surpassing my limits, evolving further from that. I've done nothing but take. I want to repay the favor. I'd like you to understand that my loyalty forever belongs to you. Carrera usually had an arrogant streak a mile long, but this was probably a more sincere side of her. I mean, a primal demon born in antiquity should really outclass a freshly born demon lord, but regardless of that loyalty, I knew exactly how to reply. Well, keep up the good work, then. By this point, if you weren't here for me, our entire court system would collapse. Monsters really did tend to follow the will of the strong. Anyone could arrest a criminal, but judging them required someone powerful to fill the post. I'd like to institute a jury-style system in the future so we could leave cases to the people outside of serious, vicious crimes, but that would come once our nation was stable. Tempest was still a developing country, so Carrera's strength was helping me a lot right now. Oh, I'd be glad to. I'll do whatever you ask of me, and I know my clan will, too. She seemed to relish the chance. I then looked over her overview of her clan and their stats, to be exact, Ajira's and Esprits. Name, Ajira, EP, 733,575. Race, Demon Peer, Marquis. Protection, June Clan. Title, Tyrant's Master. Magic, True Battle Will. Ability, Ultimate Gift Blade Transform. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Name, Esprit, EP, 552,137. Race, Demon Peer, Count. Protection, June Clan. Title, Tyrant's BFF. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Unique Skill Observer. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. Pretty good. This met the old standard for demon lords, didn't it? Ajira was equivalent to the pseudo-awakened Clayman, and if I had to guess, he'd win if he fought him back then. I really felt like this business of having multiple old demon lord level underlings working for you was wrong in some way. I also wondered what Tyrant's BFF meant. Carrera had given her that title, so I assumed that's what their relationship was. Esprit was kind of like a net-savvy, fashion-conscious teen in some ways, and they certainly acted like fast friends together. It was less a master-servant thing and more like two girls from different years in the same high school. Carrera, it felt to me, treated her clan a lot different than other demons did. But the real surprises came next. Carrera herself was insane. Name, Carrera, EP, 7,013,351 plus 3.37 million for her golden gun. Race, Demon God, Primal Demon, Devil Lord. Protection, Rimourou's Protection. Title, Menace Lord. Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic. Ability, Ultimate Skill Abaddon, Lord of Destruction. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Resist Chaos Attack. More magicules than Diablo? It made my eyes turn into little dots. Her growth had finally come to a stop, but she was clearly on top among my troops. But even scarier was Abaddon. Its abilities included Hasten Thought, Universal Detect, Lord's Ambition, Control Dimensions, Multidimensional Barrier, Surpass Boundary, and Dimension Rupture, nothing world level but all suited for attack force. Dimension Rupture, in particular, could work its way through distortion fields to kill off enemies. If Carrera combined destructive magic with her own power and topped it off with this ability, only a very few people could withstand it, I think. It could even destroy the floors of Ramirez's labyrinth, which further proved how crazy it was. Frankly, not even I wanted to fight her any longer. You're stronger now. My true feelings fell from my lips. Yes, thanks to you. That, and to Kondo for ceding this to me. I want to kill Emperor Ludora for his sake as well. I almost said, right, until I remembered. Kondo, too, was being controlled by Michael that whole time. Actually, the real Ludora is no longer in this world. Or, well, a lot of stuff's happened, but the Ludora you fought was actually a skill that took over Ludora's body for its own purposes. I explained to her that Ludora was actually Michael, the Monus body. She nodded, unsurprised. I see. And that's why that bastard Feldway called Ludora by the name Michael? Now it makes sense, my lord. Glad to hear. I definitely didn't want her picking a fight with Masayuki by mistake. Making sure that was clear with her, I ended the interview. But just as Carrera was about to exit, she turned around. Oh, I forgot. There's this thing I needed to tell you about, my lord. What is it? I asked, taking a sip of coffee. To be honest, I wasn't sure whether to tell you. If Carrera was this distressed about it, it must be something big. Maybe I should invite her to sit down again. But it looks like Ajira was once Hakuro's grandfather. BRPPPH, I almost did a comedy spit take there. That was avoided just in time, but if it was something that shocking, I wished she wouldn't just float that up on the way out the door. That. Hey. Carrera. Ha ha ha. Pretty serious stuff, eh? It's more than I can handle, so I wanted to leave the decision on what to do with him to you. And with that, she smiled and left the room, tossing the ball into my court. I was sure that was a smile of relief, now that the load had been taken off her shoulders. But I couldn't ignore this news. Diablo and the Demonesses said I didn't need to interview their clan members, but Ajira definitely deserved an audience later. He'd have to wait, though, as I needed time to gather my thoughts. For now, at least, the one-on-one interviews were over. I had our meeting with Masayuki the next day, so that was all the work for today, but it wasn't like I needed sleep. So I reverted to my casual, comfortable slime form and climbed under the covers. I always found sitting in the dark like this oddly comforting. In that case, I will now give you my report. I'm off work for today. This report involves my master's skills. It is not work. Seal might see that stuff as a hobby, but to me, it wasn't much different from work. Not that it had listened to me. I'm sure I needed to know about it, so let's give up for now. I was actually looking forward to it a little, in fact. Better brace myself, no doubt it was gonna be something ridiculous. My latest round of skill and ability integrations went extremely comfortably for me. I wrapped them all up without being forced into sleep mode, and while it took a day and a half to cover everyone, I was still lucid and alert enough to conduct all the interviews I had scheduled. And why not? Seal had asked me to invoke ability just in the middle of battle, and no way would it allow me to go offline in that situation. If it did, I'd be really pissed off. So I asked Seal in my mind to go ahead, and the data began flowing in. So what did we have here, then? Name, Rimuru Tempest, EP, 8,681,123 plus 2.28 million for his dragon sword. Race, highest level Chaos Elemental Ultimate Slime. Patronage, Grace of Friendship. Title, Chaos Creator. Magic, True Dragon Magic, high-level Spirit Summoning, high-level Demon Summoning, others. Ability, Mona's Seal. Intrinsic skills, Universal Detect, Dragon Soul Aura, Universal Shapeshift. Ultimate skill Azathoth, Lord of the Void. Ultimate skill Shub Niggurath, Lord of Abundance. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Resist Chaos Attack. That's how I turned out. It didn't really feel this way to me, but I was sporting some serious EP there. Add in my straight sword, and I was pushing 10 million. I was well used to this weapon by now, and it sure lived up to its god rating. It had transformed its shape, influenced by the unique traits of my species, and for now I was simply calling it my dragon sword. There were 2 holes in it for upgrading purposes now, so clearly it was evolving without a hitch. I was happy with that. Maybe it'd evolve more if I gave it a more formal name. No way. Forget it. Impossible. Part of me did want to try it out, but I didn't want just any old name for it. I'd try the name change once I thought up something really cool, but just because my EP, or Magicule count, was way ahead of the pack, that didn't mean I could rest easy. Benimaru, Diablo, and Zegan were hot on my heels, and people like Testarossa and the other 2 demonesses were monsters in battle. Testarossa, after all, gave Veilgrind a run for her money despite having 10 times the Magicule energy. It proved that stats weren't as important as how well you used your powers, I suppose, and by powers, I meant your Magicule count, fighting level, and abilities put together. In the battle against the Empire, they had all made maximum use of that power. If I wanted to prepare for the battles to come, I certainly couldn't let myself fall behind. For now, at least, I was ahead of Carrera and clearly living up to my reputation, so let's focus on other matters. The protection I received from Veldora was gone, taking the form of a patronage instead. Had I grown to where I was offering my patronage to others, rather than accepting their good graces? Anyway, I'd better quit trying to escape reality. It was fine that my stats got streamlined and all, but I had only 2 skills left. Luckily, Dr. Seal couldn't wait to explain matters. First, I integrated the obsolete Raphael and Belzeboot. Whoa. Wait. What was that? What did it just breathlessly spit out? It integrated Raphael, practically my parent at this point, because it was no longer necessary? Is that a problem? So I wasn't mishearing this. I knew that, of course, but I never thought Seal would go through with it. Like, could Seal even exist without Raphael? Yes. I am already independent, so there is no need to worry. Seal calmly answered my doubts. Even Raphael, something at the core of my being, was just more grist for Dr. Seal's mill. Its deeds were a shock to me, but as it was explained to me, this wasn't a big deal because Raphael was a shell of its former self anyway. What mattered was what was inside, and so Seal had gone to work, no feelings, no deep emotion. The way it so thoroughly cut away all unnecessary skills was clear to me now. If it wasn't a problem, then fine, but did it need to consume Belzeboot as well? Of course. I really should have had it check with me first, I weakly replied, but Seal kept on explaining like it knew it was in the right. To sum up, my skills had transformed beyond recognition. It was way more than mere adjusting at this point. I mean, adjusting skill was what it did, but it still made no sense to me. So what were these skills now? The first one, Azathoth, Lord of the Void, was born from integrating Raphael and Belzeboot. Veldora, Lord of the Storm, as well as the just-acquired Veilgrind, Lord of the Flame, were also sacrificed for the cause. All the related abilities were carried on, however, so Seal claimed it was no problem at all. That meant Azathoth contained the abilities Soul Glutton, Void Collapse, Complex Space, Release True Dragon, Flame/Storm, Choreify True Dragon, Flame/Storm, Control Dimensions, and Multidimensional Barrier. My old summoned True Dragon was gone, but turning Release True Dragon on and off had the same effect. Besides, now that Veldora and Veilgrind were free, they could come to my side with no magical coercion, so I really didn't need it. Choreify True Dragon piqued my interest, and that turned out to be literal. It allowed me to turn the True Dragons into blade cores I could put into the holes in my straight sword. I repeat, it took the massive energy cloud known as a True Dragon and condensed it into a little ball for my sword. I was afraid to even imagine what sort of incredible force that would unleash. I'd need their permission for this, but really, I was too scared to even picture when I might need to bust this out. Better seal it away for now, I thought, shutting it down before I even tried using it. I mean, no way Veilgrind would agree to it, but I bet Veldora would be up for trying anything once. That concerned me, so I kept it a secret. More to the point, the real killer abilities here were the ones provided by Azathoth itself. Soul Glutton, a superpowered version of Predate and Glutton. Consumes the target, soul and all. Void Collapse, the ultimate destructive force, driving a world of chaos. Requires a Monas to fully control. Complex Space, a world of chaos. A superpowered version of my stomach and isolate abilities, a prison cell that locks away anything that must be isolated. Control Dimensions, gain a grasp of time and space, allowing for instant transport with a single thought. Can even impact time. Multidimensional Barrier, a multi-layer barrier kept on at all times. Provides absolute defense via dimensional faults. That was how Dr. Seal explained it, and now things were sounding pretty intense. It tried to do all this to me during battle, even. It's nuts. That talk of absolute defense via dimensional faults, though, doubt I could trust that one. This was passing itself off as stronger and safer than a distortional field, but there were no absolutes in this world. I wouldn't be tricked that easily. Of course, I should have realized the moment Ranga obtained Hasta that I was due for some serious ability upgrades. So it wasn't a surprise so much as a feeling of sheer exasperation. With Azathoth in hand, I really didn't need any other abilities, did I? The second ultimate skill in my inventory was good old Shub Niggurath, and those were the two skills this round of ability I just had left me. These were clearly power-ups from before, but at first glance, it felt like I had lost some abilities. Hasten thought, for starters, but I could still use that one just fine. What was up with that? That family of skills, Hasten thought, predict future attack, analyze, and assess, parallel operation, combine, disassemble, cast cancel, all of creation, food chain, dominate thought, dominate laws, and transform element, are calculation-based abilities that have been integrated with myself. They are thus available to you at a faster reaction time than before. I guess I should praise this as a massive leap forward. Something told me this was going too far, but think of it this way, I was probably gonna need it for the next war. Wimping out now would lead to more losses later. That was the resolve I needed here. If I wanted to enjoy peace in the future, I couldn't leave anything behind, and I couldn't show any mercy. So that rounded out my strength, but how did I stack up with Veldora these days? Name, Veldora Tempest, pp. 88,126,579 Race, highest level Chaos Elemental True Dragon. Patronage, Grace of Abundance, Protection of the Storm. Title, Storm Dragon. Magic, True Dragon Magic. Ability, Intrinsic Skills Universal Detect, Dragon Soul Aura, Universal Shapeshift. Ultimate Skill Nyarlathotep, Lord of Chaos. Tolerances, Cancel Melee Attack, Cancel Natural Elements, Cancel Ailments, Cancel Spiritual Attack, Resist Chaos Attack. That was his current state. His resistances were perfect, of course, but worthy of note was his off-the-charts existence point count. The only thing you could really do at this point was laugh. All that crap he did while he was being measured, you know. Dot. Dot. It had happened just a bit ago, right after dinner. I was about to meet with Ultima, so I'd made to stand up and leave when Veldora got in my way. Qua ha ha ha. Rimuru, I understand you've been conferring with Benimaru and his fellows. I happen to be free right now. Huh? I'm busy. Sorry, but I'll play with you when things calm down a bit. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not that. I was just wondering when you'd confer with me. Pardon. I didn't need to interview him. Like, Veldora wasn't my servant or anything, and if I wanted his stats, I could ask Seal for them. But we talk all the time anyway. Do we need anything that formal? What? Stop being such a stick in the mud. Yeah. You need to realize how lonely you're making my master and me here. Great. Ramirez was joining in now. But seriously, we really did talk all the time. And yeah, I'd love to break out my avatar core and play with you guys, but work's more important. Besides, we were in the throes of war right now. Remember? We didn't know where Feldway was, so things had simmered down at the moment, but I didn't want to fully kick back until we at least had our troops ready to intercept the enemy. Stop being selfish, all right? Once things settle down, I'll... No, no, no. I don't mean it like that. I've grown stronger, you see, so I wanted to brag about it to you. I know you are busy, so you only need to be with me for a few moments. Yeah, he's right. You're the only one who can produce pinpoint EP readings, so help a dragon out, won't ya? What I'm saying is that I can trick Ramirez's measurements to produce anything I want, and I want to prove it to you. Oh. That's completely impossible, you. I know I can't measure it down to the one's digit, but you can't fake the entire system on me. Okay. So I was being dragged into an utterly pointless argument. Once it reaches this point, they refuse to listen to anybody else. It's faster just to play along a bit than defy them. All right. Let's go to the control center, then. So I measured Veldora's existence points. The equipment for this was connected to the monitors all around the labyrinth, but only the main panel in our control center could operate it. Seal could synchronize itself with the labyrinth, allowing me to take measurements anywhere we wanted, but that's my little secret. I was short on time, so we quickly trundled over to the control center. Right. So I measured my master, and I came up with an EP of 88 million. And that's impressive enough, but he insists he can push that figure higher whenever he wants. I want you to yell at him not to be so full of himself. It was an unimaginable figure. No human could beat him, not even a million-class level saint. But was the number accurate? Yes. Veldora's existence points are exactly 88,126,579. Pretty close. Measuring these high numbers came at the cost of precision, but since we mostly used our equipment to evaluate labyrinth challengers and invaders, there was no pressing need for a system upgrade. But if Veldora really could cook the figures to say whatever he wanted, it proved there was something wrong with our measurement gear. I didn't want that to go unaddressed, so it was a good thing I'd bothered to check just now. At least this brief diversion wasn't a total waste of time. Now we'd have to see if Veldora really could cheat the system. Well, my measurements say 88.12 million. That's pretty much the same. So are you saying you can bump that number up at will? Or is it underestimating your score? Either way, I wanted to ask how he'd do it and come up with countermeasures. When I asked Veldora for a sample, he smiled the biggest grin ever and removed his coat. Oh, great, I thought. A bead of cold sweat felt like it was running down my skin, even though I'd stopped sweating long ago. Then that laugh came roaring through. Qua ah ha ha ha. Behold, and look closely, as I unleash my true power. With a loud, echoing whump, the coat fell to the floor. It was followed by the wrist and ankle bands he had on his arms and legs, all smashing against the floor and leaving cracks. Taking off heavy clothing wasn't going to up the numbers. I'd never let that happen. EP measures the amount of energy within you, it's got nothing to do directly with your battle performance. But Veldora didn't get the message. Ha. Well. Go ahead. Measure me with that machine of yours. But don't blame me if I it. Sheesh, this is embarrassing. I understood what he was trying to do, but it was just too pathetic to watch. I just made another measurement, but there is not even the slightest change to his statistics. Of course there isn't. Veldora, listen to me. Master, it's still at 88 million. Ah, Ramirez just stabbed him in the heart with a dagger of truth. Don't be ridiculous. Rimuru, be honest with me. My EP must have doubled by now, did it not? I gave him a sympathetic look. I know you can hide your aura, but EP has kind of a different nuance. Then, as earnestly as I could, I explained that existence points were a measure of your energy store, not some kind of battle level from action manga. Veldora turned bright red upon realizing his error. It was an amusing story at this point, but he didn't need to fake anything. This really was an incredible reading. Nothing apart from an ultimate level attack would scratch him. And the abilities he'd gained were incredible, too. Dr. Seal's adjustments had evolved his skill into Nyarlathotep, Lord of Chaos, which included hasten thought, analyze, and assess, all of creation, control probability, parallel existence, investigate truth, control dimensions, and multidimensional barrier. That's a wide variety, and Seal's rearranging and organizing made them far easier to tap into. He even gained parallel existence. I knew from fighting Veilgrind just how much of a pain that was, but with control probability in his quiver as well, Veldora really did feel invincible. In fact, he was, as long as I didn't die. His heart core was still inside me, his memories and emotions backed up inside. Between that and being able to launch a separate body at any time, there was practically zero chance of destroying him. The whole EP thing was a laugh, but I truly was glad to have him on our side. So Veldora's existence points were more than 10 times mine, and I likely stood no chance against him, but I still had questions. For one, I'd beaten Veilgrind recently. I'd used predate on her, even. Her EP at the time was reported to me as around 26.87 million. I consumed more than 50% of her, by the way. Something like 30% was still in recovery, and that would be restored back to what I ate as well. Seal was certainly careful with this stuff, which I was glad for. My question was that considering all the energy of hers that I'd consumed, my EP actually seemed kind of low. It was more than enough, of course, and I think battle sense is more important, but it was still something I wondered about. The answer is obvious. The energy you consumed was taken into your body at one point, but it was turned into your blood and flesh and then set free via Release True Dragon. And, what does that mean? It means that my master's maximum existence point value can be accurately defined as the sum of Veldora's and Veilgrind's EP. Question mark. I was forcibly stunned into silence. So when I had Release True Dragon turned off, that's when I could break out my full force, But, the output's the same either way, so maybe having more energy didn't mean anything. I was sure Veilgrind made separate bodies of herself because she maxed out what only one of her could produce, too. There's no limit to someone's potential force, but if you can't hit someone with it, it's a moot point. Gain enough to destroy an entire planet, and it gets hard to precisely control it, too. Maximum power, I concluded, meant little to nothing. I should also note that Veilgrind's estimated EP when I consumed her was 49,829,987. That was Seal's calculation, and I'm sure it was perfect, but right now, her count had gone way up. Name, Veilgrind, EP, 74,350,087. Race, highest level Chaos Elemental True Dragon. Patronage, Grace of Flame. Title, Flame Dragon. Magic, True Dragon Magic. Ability, Intrinsic Skills Universal Detect, Dragon Soul Aura, Universal Shapeshift. Ultimate Skill Cthulhu, Lord of the Fire God. Tolerances: cancel melee attack, cancel natural elements, cancel ailments, cancel spiritual attack, resist chaos attack. That was Veilgrin's current status. She went down by a fifth only to then go way past her initial value, more of an evolution than merely growing. Her abilities were the same as before after a round of seal optimization, but I was sure she was a master at using them. Cthulhu comprised hasten thought, flame excitation, parallel existence, control dimensions, transdimensional leap, and multidimensional barrier. A real rogues gallery. I had last seen Veilgrin several days ago, so I had no idea what she was going through. Presumably, I'd see her tomorrow, and I really wasn't sure how to approach her. She'd be scary if I riled her, so I resolved never to goad her again. My interviews, really a way to check on our current state with Seal, had come to a much appreciated close. Chapter 3, Toward Rebuilding. I was still dreading the talk with King Garzel the First owed him, but today was our meeting with Masayaki's band. That's where my attention was fully devoted. So I met up with Testarossa, feeling a bit relieved. This conference was more of a summit, potentially, a meeting between two heads of state, so we had to pick the attendees at the meeting hall carefully. Benimaru and Rigard would join my side. Shion and Diablo would accompany me, of course, and Testarossa would round out the pack. Masayaki, meanwhile, was bringing along Veilgrin, followed by Caligulio and Minutes, with Bernie and Jiwu at the rear. Our participating members were gathered in the lounge-style waiting room. This was all coming together suddenly, but nobody voiced any complaints about it. Shuna was volunteering to serve us all, even, so we couldn't be more prepared. As for our aims today, well, I wasn't here to take over the Empire. Michael and Feldway, the main criminals behind this war, were missing, and Lieutenant Kondo, architect of the entire operation, was dead. Kondo's thoughts were likely being controlled by Michael, and I wasn't about to pursue a dead man's crimes. The Empire's flagship apparently contained most of the higher-up people in their military, or at least the ones who survived. Veilgrin, the once and former marshal, was the most powerful among them, and since she had no interest in invading us and expanding the Empire's boundaries, I figured we'd be declaring the war over, working on reparations, and figuring out the rebuilding process. We had 700,000 Imperial soldiers we could put to work, but how we'd divide them up was an open question. We'd need to appoint the most well-trained of them as foremen and divide the rest into evenly balanced teams to avoid vast differences in technical skill. But look at me, getting way too ahead of myself. Before me now, an eye-opening beauty passed by, the breeze flowing past her blue hair. It was Veilgrin, and her gaze shot right into me. Ow. That really hurt. I had no, literal, stomach, but my stomach was nonetheless churning. Did you need something? I asked her. For everybody else's sake, I needed to look at least a little dignified. I thought I deserved some praise for maintaining a steady, non-shaky voice. Do you think I could have some time with you? Veilgrin replied. There was ample time until the meeting began, so I nodded, and then Veilgrin and I had a private chat. Is Veldora doing well? Oh, very much so. Ah. That's good. Veilgrin, despite her gentle smile, was concerned about Veldora. My response seemed to relieve her, but seeing her smile like that tugged at my heartstrings a little. Veldora, after all, still had a lot of hang-ups about his sister. I had asked him if he wanted to go see her, and he mumbled something about, "Oh, I have errands, I am quite busy," and walked off. It was a pathetic act, but it wasn't like I was doing much better now. In fact, I felt incredibly awkward. I'm sure Veilgrin was shy herself. Better not pry too much. So, I began, heart pounding, "What did you need?" "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? I dunno. Why are you looking so pale? Did you think I was going to drag you behind the school and challenge you to a fistfight?" "Why do you know that trope?" I shouted. Veilgrin snickered. "Well," she said, "my journey to find my beloved Ludora proved far more exciting than expected." It sounded pretty grueling, from what I could tell, but Veelgrind had a mission in mind, so to her it was a journey of hope as well. That must be why she could describe it as exciting. The journey brought me across many worlds, and many ages, in my search for him. In fact, I even paid a visit to your own native world. Whoa, no way. Way. I was wondering why she was sounding a bit more casual with me. It should have registered with me when I saw her clothing, actually. She was in imperial garb now, but when she first showed up in our labyrinth, she had been in a t-shirt and jeans. That was her look as she beat the crap out of her enemies, and seeing the footage from our archives was just surreal. People on the scene who saw it, not to mention those getting their asses kicked by her, must have thought it was some kind of fever dream. But if she was bumping around my world, that also meant there was a way to return there from this one. Of course, I died over there, so there wasn't much point in investigating that, or was there? Veelgrind had suggested she could travel through time as well. If I could analyze that ability, then perhaps. Roger that. I will begin analysis. Ah, how kind of Seal to do that. Maybe I was just giving it a new hobby, but this kind of thing was right up the doctor's alley, yeah. It's wonderful to have a little hope, at least. I was sure at least a few other worlders on this planet wouldn't mind a way back, and I'd love to make that happen in the future. But we'd pursue that later. So Masayuki's the reborn version of Ludora? Yes, he is. There's no doubt about it. His soul is all but completely intact. Veelgrind lowered her voice a little. Now we have to work on his memories. So Masayuki was still Masayuki even now, huh? Eyeing him across the room, I thought he looked just as unconfident and lost as he usually did, so that was a relief. No offense to Veelgrind, but to me, at least, Masayuki wasn't Ludora at all. Well, I'm not sure what to say to you. Oh, that's wonderful didn't quite fit, and neither did or, that's too bad, so I talked my way around it. Veelgrind lightly nodded, not angry at all. She seemed a lot less affected than I thought, which surprised me. He. You look confused. But I've experienced a few things in my time. Dreamlike moments, brief instants that seem to last forever, deeper and more intense than even my time with Ludora. So I really appreciate this, Rimuru. It's all thanks to you. She framed the thanks with a blinding smile, one that'd make your heart skip a beat. That frigid dignity that could send you to the floor with one glare was completely gone. She felt so calm now, like a completely different person. Well, good, then. Yes. So let me promise you one thing, Rimuru, I will never be your enemy again, as long as Masayuki doesn't wish me to be. So don't betray him, either, all right? I couldn't ask for a better pledge. And she didn't need to worry about Masayuki and me. I had zero interest in backstabbing him. All right. By my name and that of my friends, I swear I will never betray Masayuki. I might tell a few white lies sometimes, and maybe we'll get in disagreements, too, but as long as that's understood. Veelgrind's gaze turned icy again. Icy and terrifying. Okay. I'll do my best not to lie to him, and I won't argue with him unless it's about something really important. Eesh. Why was I the one making promises now? I kinda regretted being so honest with her. Still, seeing Veelgrind express her gratitude to me certainly took the edge off my nerves. I may have had my reasons, but I did do quite a bit to her, and seeing that she wasn't holding a grudge was a tremendous relief. But just when I thought this summit would be a nice, tranquil affair, I heard someone tearing into the chamber from the waiting room. It was Vesta. Oh. What's with all the panic? I have good reason to panic, Sir Rimuru. I just received an emergency message from my residence. King Garzel is reportedly on his way here. By his residence, he was referring to the family he'd left behind in the Dwarven Kingdom, I assumed. Vesta was a big name in Dworgen, a duke, in fact, second in nobility only to the king, and he'd been in upper-class circles since birth. I was sure that's why he was so envious of commoners like Kaijan, but regardless, getting kicked out of Dworgen didn't mean he lost contact with his relatives. One of his dark agent protégés was keeping his house in order, and they stayed in close contact with each other. Exile or not, Vesta was still a duke, after all. Hearing that King Garzel didn't strip Vesta of his nobility or demote him was certainly a surprise to me, though. He only punished Vesta himself, nothing at all happened to his name and family. He also didn't have any official successor yet, so his peerage hadn't been passed on to anyone else. King Garzel had to be smart enough to know he'd reappoint him to his cabinet at some point. That's why he didn't punish him that much, he just wanted to see some regret for Vesta's actions. Plus, I doubted he wanted Vesta's family rebelling against him, either. If they made a serious effort, I bet they could easily trigger a civil war in Dworgen, so the good king wanted to avoid pointless conflict. He was objectively a talented figure, and his relatives were as popular as they were influential. King Garzel had to consider all of that in his decision, and that's how he wound up serving me. So the Vesta house was still alive and well in Dworgen. Vesta therefore kept some connections with the royal palace, and that emergency message came from one of his contacts. But what would drive Garzel to do that? Why? We were going to brief him on things later, weren't we? Yes, we were, but it would appear His Majesty's trust in me has been flagging as of late. Oh, come on. That's impossible, isn't it? I wouldn't be so sure. Between negotiating potion prices, picking out non-medical technicians to work here, and deploying my entire family to procure personnel for us, I've been up to quite a number of things. If he suspected Tempest was toying with him, I'd have little to respond with. Remember, I'm still resolved to the eventuality I'll spend my whole life here. Vesta really was doing whatever he wanted, huh? I saw him as more sober than that, but I guess he was an ex-minister. As a politician, he must know everything about that world, along with its seedier side, but I shouldn't be sitting here admiring him. If King Garzel was coming, now really wasn't the time to kick off a summit with the Empire. I couldn't afford to keep him waiting any longer, but I also felt that him storming in with no advance notice was a little rude, too. What does a leader do at a time like this? Isn't King Garzel the rude one here? I knew he had his grievances against Vesta, but that was no reason for me to give him special treatment. Exactly. Visiting a foreign nation in secret. He shouldn't be surprised if someone tries to attack him. I'm sure he'll contact you at the border to prevent that. Vesta assured me that His Majesty wouldn't completely avoid custom like that, and, as if to prove him right, one of our communications agents came running in. I have emergency news to bring to you. His Majesty King Garzel of the armed nation of Dworgen has just requested permission to enter the nation. His group comprises 5 people in all. What should we do? They had no reason to refuse entry, but they couldn't just say yes on a whim. That's why this bureau chief level agent came in to ask for my take. The right move to make in an emergency like this, I thought. I'd probably be just as flustered. Maybe he should have gone through one of my cabinet-level officials first, but no need to mention that here. Shuna was also kind enough to bring the agent some water, which he gladly accepted. I'll talk to him, I said as I set up our messaging magitool. In the end, we had King Garzel make an unannounced special guest appearance at this summit, and now here I was, greeting him. Diablo and Shion were on hand to guard me, as usual. Heh. I appreciate this, Raimoru. Oh, yeah, like you weren't expecting this from the start. Even on one of their flying warhorses, it took a full day to travel from Dworgen to Raimoru, our capital. However, both of our capitals were equipped with portals that allowed for instant magical transport. The fact that he was showing up at our border despite that likely showed that he wanted to talk to me first. Ha. You noticed? There was nothing funny about this, but I wasn't sweating it. I'm just glad that Veilgrind agreed to have you participate in the summit. Yes, about that, you're not planning to join hands with the Empire, are you? That was Garzel's concern. I thought so. It'll depend on how our talks turn out, but that's my intention, yeah. Huh. Well, can you hold on that for a moment until I can hear your reasoning? I had no reason to say no, so we went into a small cafe located close to the border. The staff set up seating for us in a tremendous rush, and the adventurers who were seated there before us prudently finished their drinks and left for the time being. I felt bad for that, so I declared to the place that I'd cover everyone's tabs, which made me a pretty popular slime for today. We had about half an hour before the summit's scheduled beginning. We could travel there in an instant, but still, we had just enough time to talk about all of this. I spoke first. So I recognize we forced you to handle nearly all the post-war cleanup for us. That's fine. Our soldiers are still working around the clock on those matters. It's hard work, but compared to dying in battle, it's nothing to complain about. None of them bears a grudge against you about it. In fact, they're quite thankful. That was good. Nobody likes the guy who doesn't bother tossing his plates and empties at a barbecue, so I was a little worried. But yeah, it had been a tough battle. I was sure the joy of surviving it took all those little quibbles out of everyone's minds. All right, so what would you like to hear about? There were some things I didn't intend to settle on until after the summit, so I couldn't provide all the answers right now, but still. Well, I want to hear it directly from your mouth. You don't have any ambition to team up with the Empire and attack our kingdom, do you? What is this guy talking about? That sounds like work. Why would I ever volunteer to do something like that? I had no reason to and nothing to gain from it, plus, it'd destroy all the trust I'd built with the Western nations. That choice was never available to me from the start. Not at all. I'd lose all the trust that I've spent so much effort building, wouldn't I? It'd cost me one of my most reliable backers, and it'd put so much needless trouble on my plate. Honestly, I'm wondering why you think I'm such an idiot that you felt the need to ask that question. Gazelle looked legitimately relieved at my snarky reply. Man. He was seriously worried about that sort of thing? Your Majesty, my sincerest of apologies. This scenario was my suggestion, and it is entirely my fault that I have raised your ire. Please find it in your heart to forgive me. Dolph, recognizing my indignance, stepped up to apologize. I had him explain his reasoning to me, and basically, it went like this: if Tempest and the Empire were to join hands, Dworgen would find itself sandwiched in between two large rivals. Any military operation would become a suicide mission, so the dwarves were bound to lose a great deal of diplomatic power. If their rivals decided they didn't need to listen to a rival they weren't afraid of, they'd be all but forced to accept whatever conditions they were given. That's why they wanted to tackle that issue in advance. Huh? But either way, it's not like this is something Dworgen can stop, is it? I have no interest in going to war, but I do think it's possible we could join hands with the Empire. Exactly. It all comes down to what you think in your own mind. Dworgen is a large nation, but we don't have the war power that could defeat a true dragon like Veilgrind or Veldora. Perhaps there was no point in Dolph voicing his concern, but as king, I am in no position to accept a scenario like that. Gazelle looked serious as he spoke. It was a king's job to take responsibility for his people, duly considering any possibility that may arise. Perhaps this was a pointless thing to be concerned about, but they had no 100% guarantee we wouldn't declare war on them, and the same was true of the Empire, even if we didn't act. What if we formed an alliance with the Empire and they attacked Dworgen? Which nation would Tempest side with? These questions were kind of tough for me to answer, too. Do you understand now, Rimuru? You tried to negotiate once with the Empire to keep them from waging war. That is perfectly fine, but it didn't consider the needs of Dworgen, our nation, at all. That is not a bad thing, mind you. Your only responsibility is for your own people. But I have to say that I have difficulty accepting it. That made sense. It was true that Tempest could form alliances with both Dworgen and the Eastern Empire, but there was nothing at all between Dworgen and the Empire. If they warred with each other, we'd be kept from moving much at all. But hang on. Right, but we have an agreement that if one of us is in danger, the other one will offer military support. But there is no time limit in place for that, is there? Huh? There is no such thing as an agreement that stays effective for all time. Everything must be done in increments, providing safety for only a limited time. In fact, An agreement with a built-in time limit could be seen as safer, actually. I wasn't sure what this meant, but Seal clued me in. Let's say you had an agreement you wanted to do away with. Which would be harder to cancel, the one with a time limit or the one without? Without a time limit, you could send out feelers toward ending the deal at any time, but with that time limit, both sides could call the deal safe until it expired. Breaking a deal and attacking the other side hurts your trust a lot more than waiting until the deal ends and declaring war then. That, of course, applies only to your reputation with other nations. Someone like the Empire, with its territorial aspirations, likely didn't care about that at all. Of course, for us, breaking a time-limited agreement was out of the question. The moment we renewed the deal, that gave us the duty of staying compliant with it. If we tried something funny, the Western nations would abandon us, and that went completely against our strategy, so it was better to set some more formal rules in place. Right. So you see a scenario where we'd build an alliance with the Empire and break our agreement with you? And that worries brought you over here? I am glad you understand our concern, Dolph replied. Yeah, I can see that being a worry. Okay. In that case, if we do wind up signing an alliance, I'll be sure to carefully go over all the terms related to that kind of thing. Everyone looked reassured by this. See? I told you that was too much worrying. King Garzel was lording it over his men now. Didn't he have a responsibility for his people and all that? He sure didn't show it to his own officials. So Rimuru, our time is almost up. Shion looked at her wristwatch. That was another thing I'd built with Kaijin and his team for fun. A secretary could probably use a watch, I thought, and she loved it when I gave it to her. All right. Ready to go? I will open a transport gate, then. So our impromptu talk came to a close. We left the cafe, and in another moment, we were back in the meeting hall. It was 10 in the morning, and everyone was assembled in the hall, sitting around a circular table with a notch cut out of it, kind of like the C in a vision test back in Japan. The formal name for it is the Landolt C, invented by the Swiss-born ophthalmologist Edmund Landolt in 1888. That was pretty smart of Seal, but I didn't need any trivia at that moment. Stick to the main facts. This notch was in place so people could walk through it and stand in the middle of the circular table if they so chose. We had a large screen set up facing the notch, positioned so nobody's view of it would be blocked. Since 3 nations were now taking part in this summit, we decided this arrangement would be better than having each side face each other. The notch was on the south side of the chamber, and we sat toward the north. I had the true north seat, Benimaru was north-northeast, and Rigard was north-northwest. Shion and Diablo, as always, were standing behind me. The Imperial side was seated toward the east, Masaiki on true east and Vielgrind to his right on the east-northeast side. General Caligula was east-southeast, and Major General Minutes was southeast. Jiwoo and Bernie were standing behind Masaiki, guarding him. If they were, I assumed they'd worked matters out with each other. Nice to see. Finally, on the west were Garzel and his band of party crashers. Garzel was seated true west, Pegasus Knights Captain Dolph west-northwest, and Dworgen Archwizard Jane on the west-southwest side. Henrietta the Knight Assassin and Vaughn the Admiral Paladin were providing guard duty for their king. That's how our 3 sides were arranged, and as I surveyed the meeting hall, I noticed Masaiki looking restless. His face seemed tired, expressing, "Why is this happening to me?" more eloquently than any words. He wouldn't have to worry. I had an affinity for the guy, so if something went wrong, I'd step up to help him. Testarossa, the chairperson of this summit, got to her feet. Everyone looked at her as she stood in the center and gave some opening words. The appointed time has arrived. Everyone seems to be here, so I would like to get this summit underway. With a bow, she returned to the south side of the table. A chair was in place for her, so she'd have somewhere to sit when her services weren't required. I asked her in advance to lend me a hand if I got in trouble here, and I was sure she'd guide me through whatever might happen. I will begin by discussing the aim of this summit. We find ourselves at this event with little in the way of advance preparation, and I think some things might be said without being fully intended. If that happens, I'd like everyone to avoid belligerent behavior, stay calm, and listen carefully to the other speaker's opinions. Testarossa paused here, gauging the audience's reaction. She represented us in the Council of the West, and she was used to proceedings like this. I just hoped things stayed this smooth until the end. That was my earnest wish as I focused on her. Now, I'd like to start by confirming one thing with all our participants. In anticipation of the closing of hostilities, the Empire wishes to forge an end-of-war agreement. In addition, in consideration of our nation's relationship with the Empire, it would also like to ratify a new pact outlining our future direction. Do I have all that correct? No objections here. Masayuki looked like he was going to say something, but Veilgrind spoke up first. Yes, and none from me. Garzel nodded his heavy head as well. They had both acted ahead of me, so I hurriedly spoke. Right, so first, I'd like to go over the current situation with all of us. Anyone mind that? I was sounding pretty awkward, but so what? I waited for everyone's reaction, acting like I deserved to be here. Masayuki looked toward me, gaze respectful. I love that guy. Why, yes, I do think I'm all that and a bag of chips. Like, this hall's filled up with the most powerful people from the most powerful nations in the world. It's not like I was having dinner with the Prime Minister of Japan in my previous life. Hell, I never even saw a member of the National Diet in person. There was this one time when a director from MLIT, the Japanese Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism, stopped by to check on our office. They were a client of ours. That's about it, though, and even then, it was just one of those awkward, informal office tours. We didn't wine and dine this person or anything. At first, I would have been nervous even chatting with someone like that about non-work topics. Now, I was dealing with kings. Plural kings. It was kind of deeply moving, actually. If there are no objections, I'll have Testarossa begin, and we can discuss matters with one another when she's done. I'm willing to accept all feedback, and I'll have any mistakes corrected as well. You may begin. The conversation went as Testarossa had outlined it with me beforehand. I'd tell everyone to stay quiet until we had our say before turning it over to her. She said this would keep things moving along. People on the same level as me, King Garzel, Emperor, for now, Masayuki, and his proxy Veilgrind, could speak up whenever they wanted, but anyone else who did so risked punishment for insulting the words of their kings. I wasn't sure how I liked that, but if it made things easier for me, let's do it. So Testarossa began her rundown. She went over how things had worked out atop the airship, stuff Garzel and the other dwarves weren't aware of, although she glossed over the truth at a couple of key points. Then I attempted to explain that Ladora, the Imperial Emperor, was actually a skill that had achieved sentience, but when we got to the part about how we won the battle against Veilgrind. Wait. Garzel called for a timeout. Oh? You can speak up later. As if I could wait for that. Hey! Why is he yelling at me? King Garzel, is something wrong? That came off more modestly than I meant, but Garzel just stared at me, head propped against his hand. He remained silent as his eyes turned toward Veilgrind. I know this may be rude of me, he gravely began. But does Lady Veilgrind agree with Sir Raimuru's statement just now? Garzel was being unusually polite. He'd called Veilgrind lady, even. Pretty unbecoming of a king, I thought. I looked on, wondering if this was going to work, but Veilgrind just offered him a placid smile. I have no problem with it, Dwarven King. I know you are a very intelligent man, far superior to Raimuru over there in terms of leadership. Ladora always has wonderful things to say about you. He wanted you on his team ever since you attained the title Master of the Sword. That's why I know you, and I certainly don't dislike you. So don't be so uptight, all right? Relax, and let's mingle with one another. Why yes, my lady. Bert is a true dragon, the strongest presence, and the guardian deity of the Empire. Can you really say such things in public? No need to worry about that. You're Raimuru's friend, yes? If so, there's no reason for me to meddle with you. As Rimuru said just now, I was defeated by him. That was surprising. I thought Veilgrind would claim she hadn't lost, like Veldora did, but she was perfectly frank admitting defeat. It was a shock to me, but much more than that to everyone else. Lady Veilgrind was defeated. I can't believe it. The legend, the undefeated myth. The Imperials in the room, raised in the lands Veilgrind ruled over, abandoned their silence and verbally expressed their extreme anguish. Are you serious? That godlike presence, something no mere mortal could ever best in battle. You're saying he beat you? I can hardly believe it, but if she admits it, it can't be a lie, huh? Dolph could not speak coherently, and Vaughn was having trouble accepting reality. Meanwhile, Henrietta alone was looking at them and King Garzel, having a little smile to herself. He. How refreshing to know I don't have to report back to anyone about this. If I told everyone, they would think I've lost my mind. Sounded kind of rude to me. But that was a Dworgen matter, and now wasn't the time to bring up stuff like that anyway. In the midst of this, Jane spoke up, taking a step back and observing Garzel as he was deep in agonized thought. Garzel, all of you, calm down. I'm not surprised in the least. The whole matter with the primals wrung every drop of surprise from my body, and when I saw the evolution ceremony, it taught me that surprise was for the weak. Sounded like it was an enlightening experience for her. That's why she was the only calm presence left in the room, I suppose. But her words brought the Dworgen entourage back to their senses, and they bashfully recomposed themselves. As for the response from our gang. What? Sir Rimuru, you emerged victorious against Lady Veilgrind? Unbelievable. We must have another feast tonight, mustn't we? There he goes again. For Rigard, any excuse is good enough for a party. And here I thought he never doubted my victory from the start. Yeah, well, I figured as much. I mean, I saw it and all, so. Oh, great, Benimaru had been sneaking a look? But before I could admonish him. Benimaru, what is the meaning of that? Don't tell me you, and only you, were watching Sir Rimuru at his most gallant and awe-inspiring?
No, Shion, I was tasked with checking on the state of our battle.
I merely stopped by for a few moments. He was trying to find a decent excuse, but Benimaru never was good at that. Diablo, meanwhile. Oh, you weren't watching, Shion? What a shame. Truly a pity you couldn't bear witness to such a wonderful battle. Don't agitate her, don't agitate her. I didn't think anyone was as good at harassing people as Diablo was. I noticed Testarossa sighing at this sorry sight, too. You just didn't want to cross this guy at all costs. Quiet, please, everyone. Testarossa might have been exasperated, but she didn't forget her role. Waiting until everyone was sufficiently calmed down, she spoke up to quiet the room. If she stepped in a moment later, Shion and Diablo might have started arguing. I offered her a silent good job for that performance. Once things were chill again, the summit continued. Testarossa gave me the signal, so I kept going with my rundown. So yeah, after I defeated Veilgrind, I captured her and put her through a thorough interrogation. That made me realize there were a few inconsistencies with her story. It seemed like Emperor Ludora wasn't who he claimed he was, so I put Veilgrind under observation for a bit, and then I discovered a terrifying fact. I'll cut out the details, but Veilgrind's mind was being controlled by none other than Michael, the will contained within the Emperor's skill. Now we were getting to the good part. I was about to continue, all smiles, when... Hold it. Another objection? And from Garzel again, too. If you could save the questions for later. Garzel heaved a heavy sigh, interrupting me. I was sure he was trying to collect himself with that sigh. Then, slowly, he spoke. Listen to me, Rimuru. I know I am speaking out of place, but I can no longer sit here silently. No. Why are you cutting out the details? How would we ever accept that a skill powerful enough to control the mind of Lady Veilgrind exists among us? And what did you say? The will contained within his skill? I've never heard of such a thing. Do you know anything about this, Jane? I've never heard of the like. Garzel was trying to contain himself, but he just couldn't hide his agitation. Jane, no doubt lost in her own thoughts, was slow to respond to him. It was odd that nobody was complaining about Garzel's interruptions. Veilgrind was smiling a bit, enjoying all this, like nothing mattered as long as she had Masayuki. The current emperor, on the other hand, had already lost track of the proceedings. He was just sitting there, all but declaring to the world that this had nothing to do with him. I had a feeling such a bold presence would give Caligulio and his people the wrong idea and boost his rep, not that he'd ever notice. But enough about him. Benimaru and the others looked really curious, too. They hadn't pressed me on this before, given how I didn't really want to talk about it, but I was sure they wanted to. That's probably why Testarossa didn't stop Garzel, but, quickly realizing her error, she tried taking over again like nothing had happened. Quiet, everyone, please. Regarding King Garzel's question. Her quick reactions were much appreciated, but this would be hard to recover from. I guess we could just let this slide, but now I was thinking it wouldn't be so bad to just tell everyone. All right. I'll go over the details. Are you sure, Sir Raimaru? Yeah. We have nothing but national leaders in this meeting hall. I doubt they'd go leaking secrets, and if they did, it wouldn't amount to anything. It's true. Even if I revealed the existence of a Monus, it wasn't going to hurt me at all. The only thing I absolutely wanted to keep secret was anything related to Seal. I would appreciate that a great deal, Raimaru. Garzel bowed his head, expressing his gratitude. He sounded the way he did back in our training partner days. I guess he stopped trying to put on a formal facade with me. That put me at ease, too, so I dove right in. I went over the complete story, how the ultimate skill Michael had achieved sentience thanks to the exhaustion of its owner, Ludora, turning into the Monus Michael. I also discussed everything I knew about the skill's vicious abilities. An ultimate skill. And no unique level skills can work against anyone who possesses one. Not precisely. The strength of skills can vary depending on the willpower driving them, so there are still some unique strong enough to beat an ultimate. Those are the rare exceptions, though. Arts, too, are direct reflections of the wielder's will, so those can hit home against an ultimate as well. I think King Garzel's would, for example. They would, and magic's the same way, too. A magic spell is kind of a skill and an art at the same time, so depending on your strength of will, you could defeat an ultimate skill owner with it. I think you know what I'm talking about, don't you, Jiwoo and Bernie? Having lost to Diablo, I figured they understood. They both nodded listlessly in return. Diablo, meanwhile, was giving us the most distastefully blissful smile as he pondered over something, nothing good, I was sure. I wanted to tell him to stop thinking, but if he was behaving himself, I guess it was no problem. Xian was mumbling to herself, I really should procure an ultimate skill for myself, then, and the like. She realized they call them ultimate because they're really, really hard to get, right? But I had the strangest premonition that she'd actually do it. It kind of scared me, so I stopped thinking about it. So that about covers it. Michael's got a very special ability that lets him take full control over anyone defined as the angelic type. That's why Veilgrind couldn't resist it, and it brought her under its thrall without her ever realizing. I think Lieutenant Kondo was also affected by its rule. I was told that he was released from it just before his death, which gave him enough time to pass on his will to Carrera. Kondo. The figure stalking the halls of information. Him as well? It's hard to believe, but I'm not foolish enough to doubt Lord Raimaru. Oh. So then Sir Damrada? Yes. I think he realized before any of us that something was wrong with His Majesty the Emperor. The Empire side was stirring, although not enough to interrupt me. This normally wouldn't be allowed, but there wasn't much point clamping down on it. I kept soldiering on so no one would bring it up. Now, we believe that we've discovered Michael's goal as well. It is aiming to revive Veldenava, its creator and true master. No. The shouting began anew. I wasn't sure who it came from. Well, I did, but I wasn't going to start naming names. So now that we know they were under Michael's rule, I have no intention of pursuing the Imperial higher-ups for war crimes or the like. If they decide to continue warring with us, though, that's another story. I paused and looked at Masayuki's group. Masayuki himself was unmoved, he was so disinterested in this, it was almost mesmerizing. Caligulio and Minutes, meanwhile, were half chuckling at the thought. They had no reason to fight me and absolutely no chance of winning, either. I'd probably react the same way. Looks like they're okay, then. But I'd surmise that none of the Imperials here wish to do that, and we've already worked out our differences with Vielgrind. Michael was disguising himself as Ladora, and now that he's disappeared, they'll need a new leader, won't they? That's part of what today's summit is about, but would the Empire be able to offer their take on that? I turned the floor over to Masayuki's group. We needed to know this so we were all on the same page and could figure out what direction the Empire was taking. That's what Gazelle's team was most concerned about, and I felt we needed to lay everything out on the table for them. It was a big bet, of course. Normally, in a summit like this, you'd state your opinions and get feedback from all parties involved before holding any public meeting, apparently. We were flying by the seat of our pants here, though, so I couldn't guess how it'd turn out. In national talks, you weren't supposed to do this, but Testarossa wasn't stopping me. This was just the consensus opinion on running a summit, after all, and she was smiling like there was no problem with my approach, so I ignored my worries and kept things frank. So how would it turn out? Minutes? Yes, sir. Minutes, will brief you on this subject. Regarding the current state of the Empire, we have lost more than 2/3 of our war power, making it impossible to continue with hostilities. We are prepared to accept a treaty of unconditional surrender, but there is one problem to address as well, namely, the lack of a fully ordained leader on our side. This is something Lord Raimuru himself mentioned just now, but our most important priority at the moment is establishing and backing a new leader for ourselves. And since we have this opportunity today, I hope that all of you will accept and recognize our new emperor here. Minutes gave the speech without fumbling over himself once, bowed, then looked at Gazelle and me. Is that your proposal? Gazelle asked me. So you were expecting me to appear unannounced from the start, Raimuru? What? Not really. I see we've been outfoxed, haven't we? This meeting isn't about Tempest and the Empire banding together, it's about Tempest backing the new Emperor and building a solid base for the Empire to grow on. And in that case... Indeed. We and Dworgen would gladly contribute to this. I would expect something in return, however. Whoa. Why did we just go from talking about accepting this new Emperor to this weird idea that we'd be backing him? I am honored to hear you say that, Your Majesty. We, of course, will provide consideration that should prove suitable for both of your nations, as much as we can possibly provide, so please be assured of that. I have to say, Minutes here was talking and acting like a seasoned politician, wasn't he? Not at all like when he was in battle. He was elegant then, too, but I guess he was the type who looked natural doing just about anything. Meanwhile, I was struggling just to understand what was going on. Nobody could tell because I couldn't sweat, but inside, I was freaking out. Anyway, if Gazelle had given his approval, I guess I was up next. Benimaru and Rigid were stealing glances at me. I lightly nodded back and began speaking. Sure, I approve as well. And depending on how things turn out, I promise I'll provide him our full support. I was just going with the flow, and now my understanding was catching up with me. Helping Masayuki was my intention from the start, but if you thought about it, that connected to providing aid as a nation, too. If we could make them owe us a favor and build a better future relationship, I was sure that'd be the end of all wars between us. Even if it didn't go that well, we'd be fine for a good while, at least. We'd let the next generation worry about the far future, we needed to build a now for the time being. Thank you very much. I'm sure His Majesty the Emperor is just as glad to hear your words. Minutes bowed to us again. I really didn't need that formal stuff. Let's just keep this going. So by new Emperor, we're talking about Masayuki here, right? Or Emperor Masayuki, I guess I ought to be saying. Lord Rimuru. Oh, no, that's no problem. Like, I can keep on calling you regular old Rimuru like before, right? Ah, Masayuki, my heartfelt friend. Of course, Masayuki. It's hard, you know, figuring out the right thing to call people at times like this. Rimuru. I never thought of you as so generous before. I was practically holding my breath the past few days. Yeah, I get it. All alone in a war zone, no allies to turn to? Veilgrind clearly didn't care about the Empire's common people, besides. She didn't see the point in worrying about any of that petty stuff, and the nobility was surely busy with their own affairs. Nobody could think about Masayuki's circumstances, so I'm sure he had to shoulder all that anguish by himself. That was why I'd wanted to talk things over with him, but asking Xion to relay the message sure backfired on me. I was picturing more of a personal chat, where we'd sit down and think about what both of us would do. That's what I wanted, and I was sure Masayuki did as well. But there was no turning back now. I didn't know anything about manners, so I was just gonna do what I wanted. May I have a moment, everyone? Before anyone could say anything else, Testarossa got the ball rolling. So Rimuru, our leader, seeks a more informal discussion. I know we all have our own positions to think about, but would you mind conducting this summit more in accordance with our style? She surveyed the hall with a smile. I swear, there was nobody I could rely on more right now. And Masayuki looked happy about it, too. Garzel was smirking and shaking his head, but he didn't voice any objections, and his underlings weren't about to, either. That was the end of the formal summit, now to get our hands dirty. Boy, I can't thank you enough. I was about to keep my mouth shut the whole time, too. Yeah, I'll bet. That's what I wanted to do, too. Fools. We can't have the masters of entire nations acting like that. Fa. You say that, Garzel, but you acted the same way, didn't you, once upon a time? Dignity and majesty are something anyone can gain, with experience. Jane, do you really have to bring that up here? The tension was instantly gone, and just as quickly, everybody was relaxed. Masayuki would now be officially named emperor, and we decided that all three nations would back the decision. The rest was just details, we didn't need to act so formal with one another now. I chose to be casual and asked the most pressing question on my mind. By the way, Masayuki, I'm glad you're gonna be emperor, but are the imperial citizens gonna accept that? I know we're all for it, but if the people aren't, we're gonna have problems, aren't we? Masayuki's eyes lit up. He must have thought the same thing. Right? It'd just be so weird, wouldn't it? Ahem. Your Majesty, if you could control yourself a little. Caligulio tried to corral him, but Masayuki wanted to clear the air on this, and Garzel was willing to help. For that matter, what are you going to do about the lineage? Because you have not a drop of Emperor Ludora's blood in you, right? I doubt the nobility will accept that. That won't be a problem, replied Veilgrind. As our imperial court law states, the person so named by Veilgrind, protector dragon of the empire, is Ludora, the emperor. I'm sure many people think that's an archaic law, but it's both the truth and the most important part of the rules. Indeed, agreed Minutes. Emperor Ludora has always been reborn as the legitimate child of a noble lady, but in our long history, there are some miscreants who tried to swap him out with another pretender to the throne. The one who sniffed out these crimes and punished the perpetrators is the Marshal, in other words, Lady Veilgrind here. Well, yeah, trying to swap out the kid was never gonna succeed. If you knew how Ludora's reincarnations worked, there was no way you'd mistake a fake for the real thing. And I didn't even want to imagine the punishments involved. I didn't have to ask to know they must have been horrible. That being said, His Majesty always makes sure he passes on his sense of self to the next generation. Even if Lady Veilgrind never formally named him, I'm sure he'd be discovered in time as an adult. Oh. So it gets easier to spot the guy once he's old enough to gain some self-awareness? Okay. Are you gonna say that Masayuki was an illegitimate child or something? That would never work, Lord Rimuru. Our senators still have their records of the old Emperor Ludora, his blood type, even his DNA information. We might present a suitable stand-in as his mother, but claiming that Sir Masayuki is the son of Emperor Ludora is all but impossible. Whoa. Empire tech had advanced that far? I thought it was a pretty good idea, but minutes stopped me in my tracks. I had no idea this world had DNA testing. What is DNA? Well, Gazelle was asking, so I did my best to explain while Caligulio and the others chatted next to us. We didn't have that sort of precise testing back in the day, I'm sure. I heard it created some real problems for you. Oh, yes. People would come begging to me to help with every single custody battle in the Empire. It was such a pain. That was great and all, but wasn't the Empire in trouble, then? Right now, their real emperor was permanently gone, and in his place was Masayuki, a reincarnate with none of Ludora's memories. It'd be difficult to prove his soul belonged to the emperor, and despite our nation's backing, we didn't really have a way to prove he should take the throne. Well, why doesn't Masayuki just pretend to be Ludora? Wouldn't that be easier? He's got the same face and everything, I offered. Any testing could be faked well enough, given the Emperor's powers. Then we could just shove Ludora's memories into his brain, and all would be well. Ah. I thought it was a neat idea, but Veilgrind shot me down again. Could I ask why not? You haven't forgotten about Michael's ability, have you? All the faith and loyalty the Imperial population places on Ludora is what's powering Michael itself. If we announce that Emperor Ludora is dead, we could theoretically take all of that away. Oh? Yes, of course I remember that. She is correct. Simply declaring him dead would achieve nothing, but if that loyalty could be pointed toward a new target, it would shut away Michael's abilities. However, Michael has likely expected this and changed the target of its abilities from Ludora to someone else. Yeah. I'd suggested we kill off the Empire's entire population once, after all. If Michael was taking countermeasures, it had probably switched its energy source to someone I couldn't touch. That, or someone incredibly powerful. I'm sure Michael is taking measures, yes, but it's better to commit to this than not to. That way, I won't have any reason to even think about touching the Empire's citizens. Yes, of course. That's why, instead of fretting over the details, I'm just going to declare by my name that Masayuki is Ludora. I doubt anyone would dare object to that. Veilgrind sure had confidence in herself, but then, she deserved to. She's the Flame Dragon, the appointed guardian of the Empire, and the court law stated that Ludora was anyone she said it was. It made sense. Kind of the most arm-twisting approach to all this, but it wasn't like anyone could ignore what Veilgrind told them. Are you fine with all that, Masayuki? I asked. You think it's fine? I dunno. I figured he wasn't fine with it, but he didn't have much choice. You don't have to if you don't want to, Masayuki. Yikes, Veilgrind gave us a scarily gentle smile. Maybe that description was a contradiction in terms, but that was exactly how it felt to me. Oh, I'll do it. I've been touted as a hero or whatever up to now anyway, so it's not like yet another title's gonna change much. Masayuki's declaration was made with glassy eyes, like his mind was on another plane of existence, but he was nonetheless certain. Minutes and Caligulio were happy to hear it. They needed a new leader and symbol for the Empire if it was going to stay operational. And yeah, I thought Masayuki was the right guy for the job. Between his looks and his skill, he was gonna be incredibly popular before long. Okay, so we're all resolved here that the Empire's gonna back Masayuki as emperor and take measures to firm up his position? Everyone nodded at me. Except Masayuki. He only followed suit once he saw that everyone else was nodding, with the greatest of reluctance. I knew he was a responsible young man despite it all. Once he took up a job, I figured he'd see it to its end. All right. Then I'll officially announce that we accept this move. In fact, I'll also promise you will release the soldiers and officers held prisoner in Tempest in very short order. We won't try anyone for their actions in the war, but we can discuss reparations later on. We'll make all the arrangements once Masayoki's crowned emperor, all right? That sounds wonderful to me. We are all moved by your great generosity. I thought we'd all be in consensus on this, but Gazelle looked like he had something to say. I have no objection to that approach, but I have one question. So Masayoki, you are attempting to take the throne while being a known hero. How do you plan to unite your people behind you? He stared at Masayoki, his sharp eyes revealing everything in the world to him. Masayoki flinched a little at their force, flashing me a distressed look before replying, I suppose I'll want to give them a world where we all can smile and live together. I snickered a bit. That was exactly my philosophy. Yes. That truly is the best, I said to him. Right? I figured you'd agree with me. Of course, Masayoki. I actually told Ludora the same thing, but he just wrote me off as young and naive and stuff. I was worried I had the wrong idea, but that concern's definitely in the past. I knew I was right. That's great. I wasn't too sure, because I'm not any good at politics and all that. Now I think I can take the throne with some more confidence. Yeah. We'll both have to do our best, then. Masayoki and I shared in a hearty laugh. The reaction from the crowd was pretty diverse. Diablo and Xion were smitten, Vielgrin smiled warmly at us, Caligulio and Minutes exchanged an awkward, resigned chuckle, and Gazelle rolled his eyes up toward the heavens. I've had it with you people, Fei-Fei-Fa. I understand your concern, Gazelle, but neither of them has any lust for conquest, you know. They are certainly both amateurs, however. You must guide them and make sure they stay on the right path. I know, Jane. But it's going to be so much trouble, guiding these people who see governance in terms of these silly, youthful ideals, Gazelle sighed. He always fretted over us like that. Oh, come on, you don't have to worry so much, I assured him. I'm studying, too, you know. It'll be fine. I was getting guidance from Vesta and Ellie, too, not just Gazelle. Everything would work out okay, probably. You're studying? Really? Really. Only when I had the free time, though. But if he was that concerned, maybe I could relieve his mind a little more. Besides, I'm not planning to get that involved in politics. You could learn from that, Masayoki. Just let Minutes and his team handle all the real work. So I can do that? I was thinking about it, but I wasn't sure it was the right thing to do. That's sure a load off. Masayoki and I smiled at each other again. Well, do what you want. You're not alone, anyway. Spread your responsibility among your peers and grow with them. I'll help you as I can. Gazelle was still nursing a headache over this, but at least he was accepting it. Or not. But either way, he was offering his support for the long term. Then. And me as well, I have no objections to the decisions made at this summit. If the lands east of us remain stable, that brings peace to my kingdom. And I'll provide as much support as I can for the rebuilding of our border areas as well. I am overjoyed to hear that, Your Majesty. My thanks to you, King Gazelle. So everything got wrapped up pretty nicely in the end. In the years to come, the history books would call this the day the savior Emperor Masayoki Ludora Naam al-Naska entered the scene. Our direction was in place. Now it was time for lunch. Things were already pretty informal by now, so the meal proceeded along agreeably enough. We were offering kaiseki today, a traditional multi-course Japanese meal that was usually the domain of super fancy Japanese restaurants back home. This was the middle of a summit, so I opted for a menu that'd offer our esteemed guests the best experience possible. Shuna outclassed herself this time. I went with this choice for two reasons: 1, Gazelle was used to this sort of thing with me, and 2, chopsticks had spread relatively widely throughout the empire. A Japanese meal, I thought, would be the best bet. The food here never disappoints, to be sure. Yes. It's making me thirsty for something. Don't you start, Vaughn. Whether or not you meant that, we still have an important summit to wrap up. You're so serious-minded, Dolph. Isn't he, Lord Rimuru? Yeah, well, I wouldn't mind some sake, either. But I snuck a look at Shuna. She beamed back at me. Nope. Not gonna happen. But let's be patient on that for now and finish up this summit. That's your lesson for today, Vaughn and Dolph. Dedication is important. Ha ha ha. How harsh. Should I expect a different side of you tonight, then? Hey. Oh, of course, I said. Right, Benimaru? You certainly may. In fact, why don't we break out some of our very finest black spell sake? Ooh, that sounds nice. Glad to see you know how to have fun, Sir Benimaru. Ha ha ha. Well, ogres are known for their appreciation of fine drink, as I'm sure Shuna here knows. Whoa, Shuna drinks, too? I was only half listening, but Benimaru's revelation that Shuna enjoys alcohol was a pretty big surprise to me. Better sort this out. Just occasionally, my brother. Don't lump me together with Shion, please. Huh. So she does drink. Shuna struck me as underage, not that age really mattered to monsters. Ha ha ha. Sorry. Lady Shuna. I don't drink that much. Shion protested. That was a lie. Alvis was about the only person I knew who gave Shion any competition at the bar. Benimaru, all too aware of this, had a laugh about it. I didn't really picture him as a drinker, but he was married to Alvis now, so maybe he joined her on a fun evening every once in a while. I bet that built up his capacity for drink. It takes some getting used to before you find the taste of alcohol appealing anyway. Everything in moderation, of course. Enjoy the drink, but don't let it drink you up. We could all learn from that, myself included. So we were all enjoying this lunch together when I suddenly heard someone crying. All eyes turned toward the sound at once, wondering where it came from. It turned out to be Caligulio. Is something wrong? Did the meal not agree with you? Shuna came right to Caligulio's side to offer him solace. No, pardon me, he replied. I just remembered out of nowhere, me, a military man. I know it's silly for me to say such things, but so many people lost their lives because they followed my foolish plans. Eating this wonderful meal, I couldn't help but reflect on how none of them is ever coming back. I'm sorry, this is my fault. Faraga, Gaster, and Zamdo, too. Ah, a weepy drunk, huh? Not that we were serving any liquor, I guess he was just getting drunk off the atmosphere. But maybe this was a good opportunity for us. Testarossa? Yes, I've already contacted Moss and told him to bring them here. Well done. Before I even gave the order, she read my intentions and took action. Then, in less than 5 minutes, several dozen men appeared in our little lunch meet. Lord Rimuru. I, Zamdo, have come at your summons. This was Major General Zamdo and his men, the exact people Caligulio had just mentioned. They had run full speed all the way here, making them red and sweaty, but they still stammered their hellos to me between breaths. These men had died once. They'd been aboard the Imperial flagship, killed by Testarossa's Deathstreak nuclear magic and completely disintegrated. But the great thing about Testarossa was that she'd actually remembered that I accepted Caligulio's plea to spare the lives of Zamdo and his team, so she had retrieved all of their souls before triggering the magic. She was modest about it. It was only possible because you had me evolve, Sir Rimuru, but I was more impressed with the thoughtfulness she'd shown. So I accepted their souls from Testarossa, installed them into pseudo-souls, then had them placed into homunculi. Ah, are you Zamdo? Lady Veilgrind told me you had all died. But you're alive? Oh, you're right. I doubted any of them could withstand Deathstreak. Did Testarossa save them? Precisely, Lady Veilgrind, Testarossa replied. Sir Rimuru is a very merciful man, you see. Indeed, there's certainly no doubting that. Very intelligent of you. He. Ho ho ho. Now they were communicating via their tittering. It was kind of scary to see, so I looked away. So Zamdo and his group were together with Caligulio now, celebrating their safety. Faraga, sadly, I could do nothing for. I'm not omnipotent, you understand. Besides, if someone like Caligulio had the heart in them to mourn their dead companions, I'd hope they would never try something as stupid as war ever again. If you were defending yourself, then fine, but staging an invasion was the height of folly. I know that sometimes you can't solve problems with a bunch of pleasant words, but I still couldn't help but have this thought. I wished politicians would place their families on the scales with war to see if it was ever really necessary. I hoped that they'd stick to talking as much as possible and try to stamp out pointless wars that way. I didn't say it out loud, but that's what I wanted. After lunch, we continued with the summit at 3 in the afternoon. We had come up with our general direction in the morning, now we planned to go over it again and work out everyone's roles. All right, Testarossa began. I would like to start by reaffirming our positions. First, the armed nation of Dworgen. We ran down the list of what we had agreed on. Tempest and Dworgen would be joint signers of a document affirming the crowning of the new emperor. That was the first step. After that, under the name of Emperor Masayuki, all three nations would declare an end to the war and a new alliance among them. This would be the basis for a new governmental framework, one separate from the Council of the West. Dworgen would step up to rebuild the borderland areas between them and the Empire. This included the highways and nearby buildings, not that much, really, but this pledge also involved helping the victims who lived there. Once they had built trust with that, they'd get down to proper business and begin work on a train line toward the imperial capital. The plan was to take on this monumental project as they refurbished the path the Empire's Magitank force cut across the base of the Kainat Mountains. We'd deploy teams of foremen from Tempest for the job, working together with Dwarven engineers to complete it. Running Magitrains across these tracks would open up fresh lines of distribution, encouraging people to travel more. It'd be the first step to an entirely new era of development, and dreaming of that day made me all kinds of excited. It reminded me anew of how much I loved construction projects like this. Tempest's role in our agreement was mainly to provide our full support to Masayuki. We'd send Testarossa out to establish an embassy within the Empire, with the mission of sweeping away the Empire's old lines of thought and spreading the word about this new era. The Empire's citizens had no memory of losing a war. Veldora had given them a good thrashing or two over the years, but they had no experience with apologizing to other nations. Anyone who had lost a loved one would understand the pain of that, but those on the home front who weren't directly affected could feasibly demand a second war from their safe enclaves. They turned their attention only toward the profits they could earn, ignoring the pain of others, and chances where they wouldn't like Masayuki's anti-war stance. They wouldn't take direct action against him, considering Vielgrind was there, but they might decide to act all loyal while sabotaging his efforts beneath the surface. It'd be a colossal pain to deal with. Minutes would help persuade the nobility, and Caligulio would work to unite the military again, but I feared just those two wouldn't be enough to fend off all the seasoned, conniving schemers over there. Vielgrind would probably say something like, "Why don't we just kill them all?" But that was out of the question. The Empire had already lost enough important people, they couldn't afford any more losses in the bureaucracy. Instead, we'd have to take those fearsome opponents and use them to our advantage. It was going to be a tough slog through harsh terrain, but the past few days of debate told us it was the only way. That's where Testarossa came in. With the help of the sharp-eared spy Moss, she could uncover those schemers' plans in one fell swoop.